What's going on YouTube? Lou here from MCC, licensed massage therapist and certified personal trainer. And today what I wanted to do is get on here and talk about the 4 types of people you come across when you're trying to influence somebody. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this was because I made a huge mistake when I was trying to influence somebody yesterday. Particularly, this is a new client of mine. And he just signed up for personal training and he bought a lot of personal training. And I made this huge mistake because I forgot about the 4 types of people you'll come across when you're trying to sell a certain product or just trying to influence somebody. And I got these 4 types of people basically from Jordan Belford's book, The Way of the Wolf, his Straight Line Persuasion Sales, which is an amazing book. I suggest you get it if you haven't read it yet. But there's 4 types of people, and I'm gonna start with the first type, right? Which is a buyer or a person you're trying to influence who is in heat, which means this person is seeking change desperately. Okay, so what I made the mistake was this person was seeking change desperately yesterday. He's seeking help. He came out, he reached out for me. And what I did was when I talked to him, I was trying to sell him and persuade him and I was trying way too hard to show him my worth when he was already signed up. Okay? So he's a buyer, and I realized I was like, shit, I made this huge mistake because he was a buyer and he is desperate to get to the next level. He wants it. There's no influence in there. He's already influenced himself. And this is a mistake a lot of people make, is when a person is already in that level, like they're hungry. All right, so there's not much influence you need to do. They're already convinced, they're seeking the change. Okay, so that's the first type of person, is a person who's a buyer in heat. So I made the mistake with him yesterday by trying to convince him, and he kind of at one point looked at me like, bro, I'm like already signed up, like why are you trying so hard? And it made me look really insecure. So that's the first type of person you're coming to. A person who is in heat, who's desperate to change, who wants it now, who's urgent. There's not much influence. He's already convinced. And so if you're selling a product, now for me it's personal training, you will come across this maybe out of every 10 people, you might get lucky and find one person like this. Okay? So this is something that, you know, it's like finding gold. Okay? But don't depend on these type of people, all right? But these are probably gonna be your most favorite clients to have, okay? Now, the second type of person you're running into is a person who, you know, Jordan Belford calls them a buyer in power, meaning they want change, but there's no urgency behind it. Meaning they wanna change, but they could wait. They could weigh out their options. They could find other people. They're searching, they're looking around. Now, it's your job as a salesperson or a persuader to make it to where they must have the change right now. You have to find reasons and what I like to call pain points, and start diving deep, asking questions on what will happen if you don't change now. Like, what will your life look like if it continues to remain the same for the next 3 years? Now, what this is doing is future pacing them, meaning you're pacing them into the future emotionally and making them realize, like, if they don't take action, what could happen in the future? Because a lot of us are buyers in power, where we want to change, but we're not urgent about it, like someday. And, you know, I like to say someday never really comes, okay? So it's your job, if you're a persuader, to persuade them now why they must take action today. Okay, and again, this is by touching up on their pain points, finding out their reasons, or finding out, like everybody says, their why. Now, the key here is, I like to say, you must find out the person's why, but you must never ask why. Okay, I'll say that again. You must find the person's why, but you must never ask why. Now, why I say that is because when you ask somebody why that's important to them, they get very like you're accusing them. And think about it, we've been programmed this way since we were children. You know, when we did something wrong, what did your parents say? Why'd you do that? Why the hell did you do that? And when you say things like that to them now as an adult, they get very, very, they feel like you're attacking them. So again, get to their why, but don't ask them why. Now, ways to do that is just change the why to what, like, as opposed to saying why is that important to you, say what's important to you about that, or in some frame like that. So remember, get to their why, but never ask them why. Okay, so those are the two types of people you come into: buyers in heat, buyers in power. Okay, now the third person you'll come across, right, is what I call the window shoppers. All right, and so if buyers in heat, you get 1 out of 10. Buyers in power, for every 10 people you meet, you probably get 3. Okay, so that's a 4 out of 10 close rate that you should be closing people. The next group, like I said, is the window shoppers. All right, and these are people who act like they're in power, they're a buyer in power, like they want to buy, but they're basically just shopping around, wasting time. And I saw this not too long ago. I went to I went with my girlfriend. She sells perfume and body lotions at a flea market. And a lot of people are just walking around just to kill time. And they're acting like they want to buy your product, but they never really have intent. So these people are very, very dangerous. The reason why is, especially if you're new to sales, and I see this a lot with a lot of trainers, like if you don't realize that they're window shoppers and that they're never gonna buy, and they might seem interest, but they never have the intent to buy, and you can't close them, like nobody's gonna close them, first of all, okay? They're already intent on not buying. Unless you really put the pressure on them or on the heat on them, like to the point where they feel like they have no choice, and it has to be a product that's like 15 bucks. But if you're selling something like high value, like personal training could cost you up to $1,000 a month, they're not gonna buy, okay? But what I'm saying with these people, why they're so dangerous, is because you think you should have closed them. And I see this all the time where a lot of new trainers, they come in and they meet these window shoppers and they can't close them. They meet 4 or 5 people where they miss the sale and they think there's something wrong with them. And it starts to lower a person's confidence. And particularly with trainers, they start to think this is not for them. And they just started like 2 months ago. And what I tell them is like, look, nobody could have closed that person. And what you have to do with these type of people is you really have to question them at the beginning, gather intelligence. And based off their answers, for instance, if you can't get to a strong reason or a strong why on why they must change, you realize right away that these people are window shoppers. They're not there to buy. They're there to just kill time. They probably saw, it was a sample, it was a free sample. So you must identify them when you're prospecting them. And you must do your best to give them good service, but quickly also get rid of them. Now, this comes across to people too, like if you're just not trying to sell somebody something, if you're just trying to influence somebody, you have to realize when they're window shoppers. Because I find people that I feel like are listening to me, but the truth is they're just listening to me to be nice. And what I do is I go above and beyond for them. Like I'll send them articles and this and that, and like videos. And I realize I'm doing too much because now they're starting to get turned off. So be careful with window shoppers. Now, the good thing about window shoppers is if you still give them good service, they could potentially bring you a buyer in power or a buyer in heat if you give them good service. So don't discredit them right away, but just be mindful of them that they're not there to buy, okay? And the last type of buyer you run into, a person you're trying to influence, is what we call the mistakes. Meaning they should not be somebody that's even in front of you. They shouldn't even be in your pipeline. Somebody you shouldn't even be talking to. Okay? So this is really easy. If they're not playing the game, if they're not, answering your questions that you have to gather intelligence, you know right away they are a mistake. If their attitude is poor, there's no reason to convince them. Just give them decent service so they'll never complain about you. And also, just be mindful of that. And so your job as a person of influence, or if you're in sales, is to find the first two. Find buyers in heat and buyers in power. Now remember, when you get a buyer in heat, somebody who's desperate, like, you don't need to convince them. And that's a mistake I did yesterday, where he started to get turned off by my questions, you know, and I was trying to bring up all these pain points for him, and he's like, bro, like, I'm already fucking convinced. Like, why are you still trying to sell me? Like, and it just came across for me as very needy and insecure. Okay, so again, your job is to find the first two: buyers in heat, buyers in power. And you find these people through your questions, when you're gathering intelligence, when you're asking them questions about your product. You know, why do they want your product? Why must they have your product? What's gonna change? And you can see in the enthusiast, if they're enthusiastic, whether they're the first two. Okay, now remember about the window shoppers and the mistake. If you find those two, you still give them good service, you still kind, you're courteous to them, but also realize that they're not gonna buy. So remember, stick to the first two when you're trying to influence someone or trying to sell somebody your product. And just remember this. And again, you can't close everyone. Okay, nobody could close everyone. So if you're in sales and you're having a hard time right now, you're gonna get better at it, I promise you. You're eventually gonna find one of those buyers in heat who's just ready to buy right there on the spot. Make sure you close them right away. Okay, but find the first two: buyers in heat, buyers in power. Get rid of the other two. Remember, the window shoppers a mistake, but still give them courteous service. All right, and hopefully your sales will get a whole lot better, and hopefully you'll realize what you're doing wrong if you're having a hard time. All right, guys, so I hope you liked the video. Please subscribe if you see that I'm getting better, and remember, guys, day by day, in every way, we are getting better and better. Peace.